What's up, you guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Call Me Thursday podcast. You're here with your best girl, Sarah, and I'm here with my best girl, Sav. Sav, how's it going? It's us. You can see us. Hello. If you're watching on YouTube, you can officially see our sweet faces.
You sure can. So if you just listen to that on audio, you're probably like, is this girl okay? But it's so fun to know this is our first visual episode. So 10 out of 10 would recommend, if you guys are listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you usually listen to, hop over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We're going to be posting a couple of shorts every week. I don't know, who knows? Maybe we'll get some other ideas, but yeah, we're excited to be on YouTube and for you to get to see our faces because this is so fun. And we always talk about how silly and expressive, and I feel like every episode there's something that's like, I wish you could have seen what Sarah just did, or I wish you could have seen what Savannah just did. But yeah, so it's really exciting. Happy episode 53, everybody. We made it past episode 52.
Day one of year 2 is today.
Yes, that's a great way to say it.
Day one of year 2. It's on and popping.
It is on and popping, if nothing else. But yeah, it's been a good week in the Chavez household. It's been nice and busy. We've been doing a lot of art things.
Wow.
I've been reading a new book that I'm really liking called Bringing Up Bebe.
Okay.
It's French. Don't.
Okay. I think I may have seen this cover potentially, like the cover of this book. Is it about kind of how they raise their kids in Europe?
Yeah, it's like a French parenting book, basically.
Okay.
And I say French parenting book. It's like a journalistic study of an American living in Paris and her observing Parisian parenting and how different it is from parenting in the United States. And just how a lot of kids in France are just so much more relaxed and so much more independent, and they can sit at a restaurant table and not throw their food on the floor or pitch a fit until the food gets there. They're just so much more level in their attitude and behavior. And don't get me wrong, my kid is great and he's not out of control by any means, so that reading this is not some desperate attempt to figure out
fix
how
your
to fix
kid. Right.
Yeah, but I just find it really interesting. So been reading that this week and have just been powering through that entire book. Lots of fun things happening with Calvin the past couple of weeks. He's walking like a maniac. That's walking
so
around everywhere.
Crazy.
I know. I can't wait for you to see him
He's so
soon.
mobile. He's my gosh.
Mobile. At your wedding in a a month and a half, 2 months.
Literally 2 months. Getting married in 2 months. Craziest thing in the world, which is really going to be here before we know it. I know that every married person can relate. Right now, it feels so far. That's the thing. It feels like, oh my gosh, are we ever going to get to October? But I just counted, and there are 9 more weekends. Because again, we only see each other on the weekend. So there are 9 weekends left. Yeah. Which that's okay, wow. All right, we're getting close because we're in the single digits of weekends. So that's how I'm
especially since you guys alternate, right? So you're I only have 4.5 more trips to Atlanta, basically, before 100%. I live there.
Right. And it's 9 weekends, but one of those weekends I'm going on a beach trip with my family. Kind of the last hurrah for the 5 of us, which I'm so excited about. And then another weekend is our bachelorette trip. So really there's only 7. And then from there, I'm only going to travel for probably 2 to 3 of those. So really, we're getting close.
Really, you're getting married in a week.
Basically, it's tomorrow. And honestly, it could be the way that this wedding is done. It's planned. It's done.
Yeah.
And it's I love actually, and it was a male coworker of mine who said this, but it's such a good thought. He was planning a wedding will take as long as you give it. If you give it, 2 years, it's going to take you 2 years to plan it. But if you give it 4 months, you'll plan it in 2 if you're me. So this joker, she's wrapped up. I mean, flowers are done, cake is done, and those are the last couple of things. And now there are just kind of ancillary things for me to think about. My mom sent me different options for sparklers for the send off, and I'm okay, if I don't look at that until 48 hours before, we're good. Non-essential item.
Non-essential.
I don't know how I'm gonna wear my hair. I just ordered a few pairs of white shoes to figure out what I like, and then I'm gonna return the rest. But yeah, but the big things, the wedding's planned, y'all. We can get married tomorrow. I'm ready to go.
Do you have a honeymoon spot yet?
No, and that is a very hot topic in our
contention.
Yes, it really is, because I want to be surprised. I told him, I'm going on a
Oh.
trip with the person I love the most in this world, like, it's gonna be amazing wherever we go. So you just tell me the climate to pack for, and I'll find out at the airport. Like, I wanna be surprised. He hates surprises. He does not want me to be surprised. So he's like, "Please, I'm going to tell you. I need to tell you because I can't handle the pressure. I can't handle the pressure of booking this trip and you not knowing and me just hoping for the best." And I was like, "Okay, well, I mean, wherever we go, it's gonna be beautiful. The only thing I would say is that, if there was ever a time for us to spring for first class, if there was ever a time for us to spring for the nicer hotel, just do
Do
whatever
that.
whatever
Yeah.
you think is good, add to that. Like, just in terms of, like, amenity, like, where we stay, the flight, because 'cause I'm like, odds are we are never going to go on a trip like this again, ever.
Yeah.
So, like,
Yeah.
let's, do it up all the way, we can do it. But other than that, I'm like, because again, really, guys, like, what is Jamaica or the Bahamas or Turks or the Dominican Republic? Like,
It's
what are you talking
all
about? Like, it's
yeah.
all
It's all
a
basically
beachy
the
vacation
same.
resort. Like,
If
it will
anybody
all be
listening
great.
lives in one of these countries and has really strong opinions about how it's
Please tell
extremely special and
us.
unique, please tell us. Because to
Please
us, it's
tell us.
like it's the Caribbean. It's
It's
beautiful water. It's
all
beaches. It's a
Caribbean.
resort, and it's all inclusive. And like,
Thank you. It's
meh.
all inclusive. It's all the beach. We're gonna be doing the same thing no matter where
Yeah.
we are. Like, but he's so anti. And what he's doing, because he thinks he's funny, what he's doing is, I'm like, before I said I wanted it to be a surprise, I was just tossing out ideas. And one of the things I said was Cabo, as in San
Mhm.
Lucas. And he's like, Kabul? Like the Middle East? No, no, honey, I did not say Kabul, like the Middle East. I said Cabo, not Kabul. Like, no. And I'm like, but see, my thing is, like, you play too much. You play too much, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna have this, oh, Cabo, Kabul, I'm being funny, and then you're gonna book us flights to Kabul. And then the US military is going to have to push us out of a plane with a parachute, and I'm never gonna speak to you again, and we're gonna be married. So that's gonna be a problem.
As you were talking about this, I was thinking, like, God, please tell me that she told this man, like, at least general vicinity or at least climate, because your luck, Sarah, he's gonna book
These
you guys
men,
a trip to Antarctica.
they
And you're
play
gonna go
too
on an
much.
Antarctic cruise.
He plays too much because he thinks he's funny. That's the thing. I'm like, stop trying to be funny.
Like, this would not be funny,
This wouldn't be
okay?
funny because we're in a plane and then the United States military starts handing me a parachute and I'm looking at you. I'm like, what are we doing? And it's like, oh, well, ma'am, you're in Kabul, like the Middle East. I thought you enlisted into the military. And I'm like, I thought my husband just booked our honeymoon. I didn't know that I enlisted in the Marines. Like, and I feel like that's what would happen.
To Afghanistan.
I literally thought I was going to Cabo to sit on a beach, and then I find myself, yeah, there's sand, all right, because you're in the desert in the Middle East. So please,
It is hot.
just join
You
me.
can wear your bathing suit, but you're gonna get weird looks from the
I'm gonna
locals.
get weird looks. I'm going to have to wear camouflage. It just can't happen. So, but I believe in him. He's loved my life. He's so brilliant. He's so smart. He knows me. That's the other part. Like, he knows me.
He is so smart. Yeah.
So I'm like, and he picked up my ring, no help. So I'm like, you're on a roll, babe. Keep
Yeah.
going. Just
Yeah,
pick the
just keep
honeymoon.
going.
So, but he's very against that. And I feel like he's probably gonna win on that, but I hope he doesn't. I hope I
he
get to be
doesn't too.
surprised.
I hope that he stands strong, and I hope that he like really does do a big surprise that you were not expecting.
I do too.
I don't
think
know what it
that
would be,
a
but it would be so
ball.
sick.
But he's just like, absolutely not. Because I think he knows, like, I'm really excited about like travel and getting to travel with him. Like, that's one of the things on my vision board is traveling with my partner. So like, I think I have more like expectation. Whereas he genuinely, if I was like, let's go down to Florida, he'd be like, okay. Like, he doesn't like so it's like I'm kind of putting on him that I want like some sort of international vibe.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
he's like, okay, like that you obviously have an expectation, but you don't want to give me any guidance. And I'm like, precisely. I expect you to get it right, but I'm not going to tell you what I want.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So I feel like I'm not going to win on this one, but that's what we're currently in the middle of. But he's also still working on getting his passport. So I'm like, we might be going to the beach because we might be going to Florida if you get your passport on time.
Okay,
so.
yeah, because tight turnaround with passport stuff.
And he's like, I just got to make an appointment. But he got the pictures. And I'm like, you're doing great. You're doing amazing. I adore you. You got the pictures. Love. But I also have made peace in my mind that, hey, Hawaii is in the United States. So, like, all good.
It sure is. It sure
all
is,
good.
yeah. And that
all
would
good.
be wonderful. I
It'd be
really
so
do
fun.
want to go to Hawaii.
I think it's such a long, especially from here, it's such a long flight because I think you fly
usually to LA
to
first,
LA.
and then it's like 6 or 7 hours from there, I think.
Yeah, but I don't even know, like, here, would I go Birmingham? I guess I'm not going to come from Birmingham this time. Crazy. I'm going to be coming from Atlanta because that's going to be where I'm living. Wild. So would you go, I wonder if you go Atlanta, LA, Hawaii, or if you go just Atlanta straight to Hawaii.
Yeah, I'm sure that there probably are Atlanta to Hawaii. So,
oh my gosh, that's gonna be such a long flight.
That would be really long, though. That would be very.
It's like I'm not me like planning. This is my problem. I planned this whole honeymoon with you in 30 seconds. I'm like, oh gosh, this flight's gonna be so long. I wonder where we can fly out of. And it's like, Sarah, do you want to be surprised? Yes or no? Like, do you want to control the whole thing? Yes or no?
Oh man.
But wedding planning is going delightfully, mostly because it's done. And I feel like now, and this is how I wanted it to be. And I think that I'll do, like, we talked to you guys about, some of the new things that we're going to be doing with the podcast. And one of them being like kind of how I feel like it'd be fun to talk about, like how I planned the wedding. And I'm done. It's been 2 months and I'm done. Like, we got engaged May 25th. By the end of the week last week, I was done. Like, everything was booked, signed. Yeah. So maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I feel like it's set me up to, like, have these next couple months to focus more on marriage things than wedding things, because I feel like I've gone so nuts on wedding things, and with such like a short engagement, like making sure that I like also think about marriage things. So I'm excited that like my brain space is like going to be freed up a little bit more to do that.
Yeah, that's smart. And to have the last like 8 weeks or so to just really prep for the rest of your life, because I remember always having to remind myself of that like, this is all this planning that you're doing, all these logistics that you're stressing about is for one roughly 6-hour period, and then you've got the rest of your life with this person. So just infinitely more important to be prepping for stuff like that. Which also at the same time, it's like premarital is amazing and I recommend it to anybody, but also at the same time, there are a billion things in marriage that you're only going to learn as you're doing it and as life is happening and as hard things happen to you guys. And it's beautiful. And like, that's how God designed it. But
no, I agree. I think that with premarital, the reason I would recommend it is not because I feel like, okay, we talked about every issue that's ever going to come up in marriage. Like, I don't think that's what it achieved, but I don't think that's the goal. I think the goal was like, it like gave us things that we needed to start talking about. It really was just like a kind of conversation starter. And like starting that conversation, like in the safety of, okay, there's this couple who's agreed to like walk alongside us and love us well. And we know that like that they love each other well, that they have a healthy and strong marriage, that their marriage and their families rooted in the local church. Like, so we know that these conversations are starting in a safe place, but it really all they're doing is kind of like helping us start these conversations, like conversations that we don't know, even though we talk a lot, like our whole relationship is built off talking, because we have been, dating over the phone and texting and FaceTime. So we talk all the time. But it's one of those, like, you can talk to somebody all the time and like still not necessarily like land on every single topic you need to kind of go over.
Right.
So, I mean, we had talked a lot about finances, but I mean, there were just other areas like in marriage that we were like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess we should talk about that. Or what do you think about that? Or what do I think about that? And thankfully, like we end up on the same page, and we have enough like kind of common ground and like understanding of each other to, there hasn't been anything that's been like, oh, whoa, wow, I wasn't expecting that, or I didn't know that about you. But I think that they helped us a lot and will continue to help us. Just like with where to start on some of these big things. Which I think that that's the reason that I would recommend it for sure.
Yeah. And like neither of you guys are really super extremist about anything in life. I feel like you're both generally level-headed, so that doesn't surprise me.
No. And I think for both of us, like when we started dating, like the handful of things that I seriously think that like in the first like 3 months of dating, I went straight for like, politics and like social issues and things like that. I feel there are a handful of things that like I feel extremely passionate about. And there really aren't that many. Like, there really aren't that many things I care that much about. Like, Sav and I will sit, like, we will talk to each other and we'll tell you guys, like, we can't tell you how little we care about some of this stuff. Like, we could care less about so many things. But there are also a handful of things that, like, I will, like, 100% live on my soapbox for. And we talked about those things like pretty early on, like letting the other person know what you're passionate about for sure. And man, like, and I guess like I wasn't planning on talking about this too, but like shout out to you too, because Sav being like my best friend in the world, she knows that one of those things that like really touches my heart and impacts my heart is when people who look like me are killed by law enforcement, like the people who were supposed to help them, and like they didn't do anything. Like I understand maybe things happen in situations where it doesn't matter what color you are, if there's an aggressive or violent situation and the police have to do what they have to do. Like, listen, like if I'm in a bad spot and someone's being violent towards me or hurting me and I call the police, like fix it. Do what y'all got to do. It's not that I'm anti like police taking violence, but like when Sonia Massey, she got killed by the police and she didn't do anything, and she said she was sorry, and like I didn't even have to say anything. Like I literally I didn't call Sav, I didn't text her, I didn't do anything, but like she knows that that's one of the handful of things that like I care about and that I'm passionate about, and that when God talks about like grieving with those who grieve and mourning with those who mourn, you just do that really well, and you did that well this week, and I'm grateful for you.
Thanks, sister. Yeah. No, I feel like anytime it's so sickening to say, like, anytime we see that in the news, because it's become such a regular thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one, the whole Sonia Massey part, or the whole situation, just kind of, it just left me feeling so unsettled, because it's like she was calling for help, dude. Like she felt unsafe.
She felt unsafe, and like she said she was sorry, which was the craziest thing. It's like she apologized, like before she died, like she apologized, and then she just was dead, like she just died. And like I don't know, I think that for me was like such a, I don't know, like I think that it is I always feel like in the weirdest way possible, like I almost feel relieved when stuff that I see in the news like that makes me cry. Because I think sometimes I get kind of scared that like I'm just so desensitized to all of it, and
it's
like
just become too normal.
It's just become too normal. And I think that that's not just true of me. I think that's true for like just humanity. Like I think that it's just, there's just so much bad. And it's not to say that life wasn't bad or there wasn't bad or scary things happening before now, but I just think that in the age of social media, in the age of technology, in the age where we have body cameras, and then we also have social media where that body camera footage is accessible on social media and in news outlets, and like we are now able to see more of this stuff. It can get numbing, but I'm like, when I sat on my floor and cried, I was like, God, like, thank you that I'm crying. Like, thank you that I care, that I'm not like hard-hearted toward the whole thing, you know?
Yeah. It's like, I think Matt Chandler, a pastor in Dallas, if you guys don't know who that is, but I heard him on a podcast recently talking about how that's how he knew that he was on the verge of like a serious burnout heart issue, because a guy sat in his office and just poured his heart out, sobbing and crying and like just weeping and wailing. And Pastor Matt's first inclination was like, I got to get this guy to like this team, and like basically like I got to pass him off to somebody, like I can't handle it. And like had no inkling of like grieving with those who grieve. And and that was like the first sign that he was like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Like I got to get this checked out.
100%.
Which I think is really admirable that he was self-aware enough to realize that and to like follow the appropriate path to get that fixed and get healing for that. But yeah, no, I feel the same thing of like, I don't want this to become or any social injustice issue to become so normal that we just like pass over it and be like, oh, another person of color getting killed by law enforcement. Oh, there's another one, like, that's just,
thoughts and prayers,
Yeah. Thoughts and prayers. Exactly.
Right.
And I also I was having a conversation with some friends earlier this week about the podcast and about how we'll talk about certain things happening in politics and in the news and whatever. But he was saying how he genuinely can't really tell which side of politics either of us like leans more towards, which I'm like, perfect. That's exactly what we're going for.
That's what we want. Yep.
But like transparently, on a lot of things in politics, I tend to lean more towards the right. But one thing that the right does that absolutely pisses me off is when somebody, like anybody in Yeah, I guess like people of color, and like when George Floyd happened, when I'm sure I haven't even watched a lot of the news on Sonia Massey, honestly, but
Mm-hmm.
when multiple of these situations have happened and they try to turn it on like, oh, but they were doing drugs. Oh, but they were like a really
So
bad person. Or whatever. I'm
stupid.
like, so they deserve to die?
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Now we're going to dig up dirt to make us feel better
To
about
make
like
it feel like that was okay to do.
and like
That's not.
I'm laughing because it's just dumb. Like it's
Yeah.
so stupid. Like it's the stupidest thing in the world to try
Yeah.
to do that. Like and I think that like to be able to see through it and to see like you hear that and you something in you, your mind, your spirit, I don't know what it is, clocks that and is like, okay, wait, no, that's not right. Like that's
Yeah.
not to be able to say like, well, this individual died and yes, we're very sad about it, but about his past or her past or whatever. Like the people who can clock that and see that like, okay, I'm being manipulated here, like health, I think that's good. If you can't clock that, if you can't like see when the wool is trying to be pulled over your eyes, like I would ask God for some level of discernment. Maybe I would phone a friend, child. I don't know, but like you got to do if you got to be able to clock that stuff. You got to do something because it's like if you think that like if in your brain it's like you know this happened and it's sad, but he wrote a bad check or he did drugs or he stole or whatever. So
Yeah.
time out, flag on the play. Like, why is this our instinct? And people who do that, like, I don't know. I just can't, but there's also stuff where I'll say, like, I remember I was talking to you, I was talking to Meredith and Katie, and I was like, I just don't understand, like, talking about the police officer who killed this woman. Like, I don't understand why anybody would do that. Like she said she was sorry and she was on the ground and she was like crouched down with her hands over her head. She said she was sorry. And like you just killed her. Like, I don't understand that. But and then it's like, it's that Kobe quote but he's talking about lazy people, but he's like, I don't understand lazy people. I don't know. And like, I don't want to know. I don't want to understand lazy people. Like, I don't get them. They don't get me. And I don't want to understand. And it's like, I'm okay with that too. Like, I don't want to understand. I don't want to have like a logical reason in my head for why someone would behave that way.
Yeah.
Like that needs to remain illogical because it is, Yeah. And like, yes, it goes back to like, the brokenness of humanity and And I did like me and Jay, like I called him and I was crying and I was like, like, can we pray? And, prayed for Sonia and for her family but also prayed for, hey, I think that this person's probably going to go to jail for a long time. And, jail is for people who can't play well with others and they need a timeout from society. And like, hey, dude, like you probably need a timeout from society, but like also praying for him and also praying for their family. Cause obviously something's not right there if you did what you did. But it does. It's so sad. And it's one of those things that like, I hope that we as humans just stay soft to stuff. I'm not saying that we have to cry all the time. I'm not saying that we have to watch every video of every body cam ever. But like just staying soft, I think is good. And then when you like, that it's hurting, that, someone that and love is hurting, just reaching out to him, which is what you did, which I appreciate. Love you very much. You're the best ever. But I watched that thing about Matt Chandler, or with Matt Chandler and Lecrae. We'll link that. That was actually a really good like combo between the two of them. And this is all like I've been consuming all of this as I've been on my content cleanse. That we'll talk about this in a minute, but I feel like this is going to actually like turn into something a little bit more permanent. But also in this like realm of content we've been consuming has been the Carl Lentz of it all.
Yes. I was going to say, this is a great segue because talking about like, I cannot imagine why you would do the things that you're doing.
Right.
Let me tell you, I was in that thought process for quite some time.
Yeah.
But I do feel like this podcast has given me so much insight into like just the inner workings and how seeds are planted within like the abuse cycle, the addiction cycle, all these things. And so
start from the beginning. Start from the beginning. Yeah. Like, okay, like where are we starting? The Carl Lentz of it all, for someone who has no idea what we're talking about, start from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. So if you guys don't know, and I feel like we've been talking about wanting to talk about this for weeks and weeks and weeks.
3 weeks. But we've just been so excited. Yeah.
Even more than weeks too. Like at the beginning of us starting Call Me Thursday, we like rolled around the idea of saying, like, should we do a series on the whole like idea of having celebrity pastors and like pastors falling from like having moral failures and things like that. And we ended up just it was too heavy.
We weren't ready. I think we just weren't
ready.
ready.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. Like, shout out to us because we just weren't ready. And we knew we weren't ready. And like before we come out into the world and say anything that could even possibly potentially shed a negative light on the local church, which we believe
that
is
we like
the world,
dearly love and
like,
are committed to. Yeah.
We need to make sure we have our thoughts together. So no, this is something we've been thinking about for a long time. But I just feel like the Carl Lentz story is so interesting because I think so many people who weren't church people knew who this guy was, you know?
Yeah, totally. So if you guys don't know who Carl Lentz is, he was the lead pastor of Hillsong, New York City. He was also popular for being a pastor to Justin Bieber. They apparently baptized him in a bathtub in a club, or like a bathtub in some famous person's house or something in New York. I can't remember.
I think that was true of like an athlete too, like Kevin Durant or something like that. Like he baptized like, I mean, he was just like really close with celebrities, with athletes.
Yeah. It's like we call people celebrity pastors when they have hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, but like he was like a pastor of
he was a pastor to celebrities. He wasn't like, yes, he was famous for his pastoring, but I think the way most people outside the church knew him was like, oh, that's Justin Bieber's pastor.
He hung around with Justin Bieber.
Yeah,
Totally. And Christian, my husband, he also looked up to Carl Lentz for like a really long time. And we both like listened to his messages a lot. We're super encouraged and inspired by him. Read his book and everything. And then this was it 2020? 2021? I want to say it was 2020.
A few years, yeah, I think so.
It came out in the news and was like a huge thing but I feel like in both Christian news and secular news cycles that he had an affair. The girl he had an affair with came out and like went on the news herself, telling her own story, all this stuff, which felt like
she was on like the Today Show or Good Morning America, something like that. Like it was big. Like, and that was one of those like you knew that it was like bigger than just like the Christian, like the the small Christian community, because it's like this girl's on like the Today Show. Like she was on, or it was either the Today Show or Good Morning America or something like that. But it's like, when else are people's mistresses being put on national news to be interviewed? Like, who else is doing that? Like, who else
even like from regular celebrities who aren't in some pastoral role, it's like they have an affair and
their
it's like
mistress isn't on national news. Like, it was just so crazy to see, which is why I'm like, I think that's a whole separate thing of like, I think there is a little bit of an attitude of like, we almost like as a culture, like people want to see pastors fail, people want to see people of God fail because it's kind of just like a gotcha, or I told you so, or it validates your own hurt. And so it's like, let's invite the mistress to be on the news. And it's like, wait, nobody else's mistress is on the news. Go ahead. Anyway.
Oh my gosh.
I'm looking this up now to see what she was on, but
it's
keep
so
talking.
True. Yeah. And it's like people want that affirmation of like, oh, I knew the church sucked. And so I'm happy to hear that another pastor has failed. But I think one thing to point out here is that, like, yes, over the past
Good Morning
few years,
America in 2020.
Good Morning America. Okay. I remember I remember the apartment that I was in and like what I was doing when I saw that it came out. And that was my 2020 apartment. But yeah, I think one thing to point out is that like even over the last several years, as we've seen so many public figure pastoral role people falling and having moral failures, even if it's like something from their past that comes up and they get removed from leadership or they step down from leadership, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of pastors all over the world who are living faithfully until the day that they die. And we just don't ever hear about them. And that is the norm. Like, let's just say it, that is more so the norm than a celebrity pastor like falling from the pulpit and doing something absolutely moronic. But
I think that's just true in life too. Like that is it's like, oh gosh, like the news, it's bad, and like you just hear about all these bad things, but it's like that's just what you hear about. Like the majority of people, they're waking up, they're going to work, they're coming home, going on vacation every now and then. Like, like most of it, it's more normal. Like the normal prevails. Like what is louder is not, just because it's louder doesn't mean it's more prevalent, doesn't mean that it's the majority. Like the loudest thing or the yappiest thing is not always the reality of like the majority of the moment, you know? And that's true of
Mm-hmm.
pastors, that's true of church, but that's also true of just like the rest of our daily lives. Like,
Regular old Joe.
you know,
Yeah.
America's, you know, going to hell and hey, maybe, but also maybe you just need to like cut the news off, you know? And
Maybe we're just, yeah.
maybe
we're
everything's
fine.
actually gonna be okay, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
like, don't get me
continue.
wrong, I have those my own moments of
For sure.
spiraling like that. But anywho, so yeah, falls, has a moral failure, has an affair, whatever,
Mhm.
kind of goes into everything but hiding for a few
Yep,
years.
literally.
And Christian and I have been in, I guess, like in circles in ministry that are like related to people who are related to them in some ways. And so we've like heard a little bit of the whereabouts of the Lentz family. And I think they were like in LA for a little while. And then now it sounds like they're settled in Tulsa and they're at Transformation Church. And they reference that in the podcast a good bit.
Mhm.
So that feels validated. But now 4-ish years later, they have come out with a podcast that's like pretty groundbreaking and pretty like, I've just never heard a pastor come out on a public platform and talk about his own failures and misgivings like this with his
Mhm.
family in the room, with his wife in the room for the episodes, and like him basically being drilled by his wife for a lot of it, and
Literally.
like her being like, how could you like they're taking all these questions that other people have been throwing at them for the last 4 years,
Mhm.
and she's asking him these. So Laura Lentz is like, how could you possibly stand on a stage and preach the gospel and like talk about being faithful to your wife when you knew that you weren't doing that? How could you do that and feel okay about yourself? And he was like, ooh, okay, we're going there.
Right. But his kids too. Like his kids, like the kids
Yeah.
are coming out, like, you know, I remember that I'm just such like this is how I just remember I'm a Southern girl. I'm a girl from the South. I grew up in the Bible Belt, y'all, and that will just be ingrained in my life because when the intro, you know, a lot of podcasts like they'll do kind of like a clip of the conversation, then they go into the intro, whatever, to kind of grab you in. And one of the girls, she was like, "Yeah, Dad," and I asked you, "Did you have sex with her?" And I was like, "Whoa, whoa."
Okay.
Clutch my little pearls all together. I'm like, not this girl asking her daddy if he had sex. I just don't. I had to turn the TV down. I didn't like that. Like, I just was like, whoa. I'm like, and you know, radical transparency. I think on its when I say that, I'm here for it. I love it. But I just was like, me and my, you know, Southern self. I was just like, not her asking her daddy about his business. Like, my gosh.
My gosh, girl.
This was not okay by that, but go ahead. You know, do you.
You do you. Yeah.
Do you.
So I haven't listened to every episode that's been released so far, but I've listened to, I think, 1 through 3.
Yeah.
Or 1 through 4. Yeah, I think I've listened to either 1 through 4 and then like one other one. I can't remember. But
I don't remember either. I bounced around. I listened to one with just him and his wife. I listened to one with him and the kids. And then I
think there's
listened to the
another
one
one
that you
that's with-
sent me.
Okay, there's another one that has come out with just him and the girls, his daughters.
Yeah,
that I have not listened to.
I think I did listen to the one with the daughters. I didn't listen to the one that had the son in it too. Maybe.
Gotcha.
I don't know.
Okay.
But it's painted, I think, a good enough picture of like we've heard from the therapist, we've heard from the kids, we've heard from the wife. Like I think we get the gist. And I'm just here to say, like, go for it. Like, you know, do your thing. I think it comes across as I think very genuine and very endearing, and I'm rooting for him. I think that there are a lot of people who again like don't want him to win or don't want him to succeed, which I'll never get that. Like I'll never get, you know, people who don't want other people to succeed when they're really trying. But I don't know, I think that as, you know, as people of faith, as Christians, you know, hey, it's never too late, and you know, if you still got breath in your lungs, there's still purpose on your life, and you know, God's not done with you, and you're more than your worst mistake, and all this stuff that it's easy to say, but I think that like they are embracing that and hoping that it's true, like, and hoping that like, hey, we're more than our worst mistake, and it seems genuine that like we're not putting this out into the world to, you know, make a bunch of money or do whatever, but like we were public people before. And I think that's the difference. It's like we were public people before and everybody kind of was tuned into our life before. And then we went into hiding for almost 4 years. And now we're back with like, hey, we survived, and maybe this is a message of hope for somebody. So I think it's cool. I think it's cool. I think there were moments where I thought it would be cringy. Just to be honest, I thought it'd be kind of cringe, like hearing him like bear everything out there, because again, I'm a little modest, girly. I just don't know just about all this openness. But I think it was great. I really do. Hats off. No notes, really. I say that. My one note is I feel like he interrupts people, which kind of gets on my nerves a little bit. But other than that, no notes. No notes.
Other than that, no. I like that you called out the part about how they specifically touched on in one of the episodes how like they were essentially public figures before everything happened.
Totally.
And so Carl almost sees it as his like personal responsibility to come out. And it's like, and he's very unapologetic. Like you might see this as being selfish or self-ambitious, or like, I'm just trying to keep my fame up, but like genuinely I just feel like I have a responsibility to the public to tell our story, because we are coming out on the other side. And that's kind of my biggest point on this whole thing, is that there are just too many situations that we've seen in the last few years where pastors they end up in this same old cycle where it's like you're a pastor on whatever size pulpit, you have some sort of moral failure, it leads to this big scandal that's put in the news, they're fired from their job, they essentially go into hiding with their family or without their family, and they leave ministry and you never hear from them again.
Right.
And I just think it's cool, and it's important to be like honest about the failures and to talk about it, and for people to see on a large scale that like you can come out on the other side. And like, I guess I know somebody told us recently in our feedback to stop giving disclaimers, but I do feel like I have to give this disclaimer that like this is in no way excusing men or women from having affairs or saying that like if your spouse has an affair on you that you should stay with them, because I think it's like it's dependent on the couple and on the person, on if like if you feel like you want to work through that with your spouse. And Christian and I have talked about that multiple times, like what would you do if I ever had an affair? What would you do if I ever like would you want to stay? And we're like, dude, I don't know. Like I
feel like you just don't know. I
cannot picture what that situation would even look like or how I would handle that. So I think it's like it's just important to call out that there's no right or wrong. Like biblically, you have the right to leave if somebody has an affair on you.
And he talked about that, like that she had every, I guess, kind of grounds to go and to leave, and you know, she talks about her reasons for staying, which is interesting. But I agree with what you said too, Sav, is like we've seen this cycle before with the, you know, well-known, either like, you know, you are a celebrity pastor in that you're famous for your preaching, or like you're a celebrity pastor in that you're famous for pastoring celebrities, or maybe some mixture of both. And you have some, like we in the church, I don't know where this term came from, but we love to call it like a moral failure, which it literally is, but that just has somehow become like the universally accepted term. And then you step down or take a step back and you just kind of fall into oblivion, and then no one ever hears from you again. And it's just, it's weird because it's like, we never finished the loop. Like you were really public here, but then you left here, and we never, like, what was the other side? Like you wanted to be all up in our face kind of when everything was going well, but then when things went left and you let a lot of people down, like, you know, what, like, where were you? What happened? And I think, and this is like a whole separate debate, like, you know, people who put their lives out there publicly, like the degree to which you put your life out there, like, do you owe people anything? And I don't know. I don't know what side of that I really come down on. And I don't think this is really about that, but I do think like the way that Carl has talked about it, from what I've heard, is like, almost like this is like his way of making amends. Like part of like the steps of the process is like making amends where you can. And while he can't make amends with every single individual who ever came into his church or even visited or was a part of the congregation, like this is his kind of living amends for, hey, I can't like take it back, but like this is some insight into what we've been working through. You know, this is what I was thinking. I'm not saying it was right, but like, you know, this is maybe some of the backstory or some of the, like, not excuses, but explanations maybe. And I think that that's a cool thing, though, to see that, you know, it wasn't just like, I want you guys to know me when it's good, and then I'm going to fail you, and then I'm going to disappear. But it's like, know me when it's good. I'm going to fail. I'm going to disappear. But then I'm going to like circle back to address the elephant in the room, which is like me going off the grid for 4 years, you know?
Yeah,
So I
totally.
think
And I've
that takes a
heard
lot of courage.
it totally does. And I've heard a
Mhm.
lot of influencers talk about that concept too of like, okay, if I am making the conscious decision to put my life out on the internet for millions of people to follow along and see and feel like they essentially feel like they know me,
Mhm.
then do I owe them if I'm not well, if I like
Mhm.
fall into a bout of depression, do I owe them the explanation of coming on my Instagram story and saying like, "Hey, sorry I haven't been in here. I've been depressed." You know, like
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that,
I
but
don't either. I think that, like, and even though, like, all, 12 of you who are listening to this right now, I don't think that this is a problem for us today, but I think that in my head, logically, I'm just like, keep it 1,000 at all times. So don't tell me up front that, like, I'm telling you guys everything and I'm getting so vulnerable and I'm sharing
yeah.
all of this with you guys and then withhold. Because it's like, wait, like
Mhm.
you said we were best friends. Like you said that I knew everything. So then for you to like kind of take it back feels kind of like, well, what the heck, bro? Like I thought that we were girls. But like from rip, me and Sav, we said there are going to be stuff y'all will never hear. You will
Yeah.
never know.
We just can't
You
be
will
telling you
never
everything.
know. Like, sorry, I'm not going to ever like try to disillusion you into thinking that we're closer than we are. Like, y'all, we're tight. And like I have said more things on the internet than I ever in a million years thought I would say, only because I think it might help somebody or make somebody laugh or
Mhm.
whatever. But like at the end of the day, like let's all keep it in perspective. Y'all are never going to know everything. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't feel like I
Yeah.
feel bad about that. And
Yeah.
so then if, God forbid something happens and we don't do the podcast for a while or I'm off for some amount of time or whatever, like I feel no obligation to tell you because I was honest up front that like, listen, you're only getting so much. And
Right.
can we all be okay with that? Like, can we all
Yeah.
be okay with only giving certain people a certain level of access? And like,
Yeah.
that's kind of
And I
probably
think we
pretty
should
normal,
be.
you
Yeah,
know?
totally, totally. And I think the part on the Lentz podcast that I found really interesting and insightful, especially as the kids were talking about it, is
Hmm.
the the way that Carl's mistakes impacted not just him but impacted his entire family and not even and it's like okay obviously they're impacting his family but like the way that their friends ditched not only Carl but they ditched Laura and they not only ditched Carl and Laura but they ditched their kids and like
Hmm.
people who are saying oh we're family like I'm auntie so and so I'm uncle so and so to you like you ever need anything you give me a call but then dad has an affair and
Hmm.
this becomes like a big press thing and if I'm associated with you I'm associated with that then
Hmm.
yeah your kids aren't getting a call from me like that feels really messed up for me and
It's
but
so
I
messed
did
up.
appreciate I feel like Carl is in a very you can tell this man's been through therapy, let me tell you. Because
Girl.
he has such a healthy mindset to say like the way that my friends reacted to my bad decisions, I can't get mad at that. Like I can't
Mhm.
however they react and respond and like whatever their response bodily or mentally or emotionally is to that, that's not something I can get angry at because of my own mistakes, which I think is
Right.
very healthy.
Right.
But also at the same time, like I think that it's important that like those people are held accountable to the fact that like you can't tell a 12-year-old kid I'm uncle so and so and you ever need anything you give me a call and like
Mhm.
I'm here with you till death that and then you ditch them when their dad does something stupid and like their whole
Mhm.
life is falling apart, you know?
Mhm.
That feels really icky to me and it's like I know that most of those people that they're talking about are in ministry.
Yeah.
Um
No,
which
and
is a
that
bummer.
feels cringy, and I think the lesson to pull from that is, just watch out who you're calling family. Like, I put something on my story the other day, like, about Grace being my family, and, like, that's because Grace is my family.
It's 'cause I
Like,
mean that.
she's
Yeah.
my family. Like, she's gonna be in my life for the rest of my life. You're my
Mhm.
family. You're gonna be in my life for literally the rest of my life. Like, this podcast, it could come, it could go, it could get to 1 billion, it could crash and burn tomorrow. You're gonna be my family.
Yeah.
Like, but they're just folks don't be telling everybody that they're your family. Like,
Yeah.
just have some discernment, some wisdom on your tongue, right? Like,
Yes.
don't just flip flop your words out there because you guys want to hear something that's really sad. I'm going to tell you this, and this is going to make everybody feel really bad for me.
Oh
But then
god.
I just need
Okay.
you to like move on, okay? But this
Okay.
is a lesson in being serious about your words because there are people on the planet that take stuff literally. my high school and college boyfriend. What do we call him? You know who I'm talking about. What's a good nickname?
Yes, I know who you're talking
What's a good nickname?
I'm trying to think of something that's like not going to make it obvious what his actual name is.
Right.
You're better at nicknames than me.
Man, I need one right now so bad. Swoosh. We'll just call him Swoosh.
Okay, I was thinking hair. I was thinking hair.
Swoosh. Let's call him Swoosh.
Swoosh. Okay.
So Swoosh, love of my life. So I thought. And dated in high school, at the end of high school and at the beginning of college. And then we break up. And Sav and G will tell you, I was sick for years, literally years. I was sick. And then right when I was getting ready to graduate, which I was going to graduate a semester before all of my friends, it was like a mad dash of like, okay, maybe let's try to get back together. And we thought we were going to get back together. And I was very hopeful. My hopes were very much up. And then right before I graduated, like maybe weeks, like it was very close to me graduating, he was just basically like, if we get together right now, I'm going to mess it up. Like, but like, we just need more time. Like kind of just like a wait for me. We need more time. Now's not the right time for us, but like, we're going to be together. Like very much. He's like, we are going to be together. It's just not the right time. So my behind believing things that people say, I go off, I move away, I'm working a job. I'm working this job, mind you, for like 2 more years. So mind you, we broke up like at this point, we broke up like 3 years ago. I'm still holding a candle for this man. And I go to my job, I'm moved away, I'm working, I'm in a different town, but I'm still thinking in my head, like he's going to call. Like he's going to call. So much so I've never told this story out loud and it's so embarrassing, but this is, I'm teaching a lesson now. Listen, please. I moved back from this job. I come back to Birmingham. I moved back. I was living in Huntsville. I come home. And this was maybe a little bit before I came home, but I think I knew at that point I was coming home. And I asked him to meet up. And I basically was just like, okay, like, is now a good time? Like, you said that we were going to get back together. And like, you said for me to wait for you. And like, you said all these things. And like, you know, I know I've been out on a few dates. You've been out on a few dates. But like, you said that we were going to be together. So like, are we? And he was just basically like, you thought I was serious? Like you thought that I meant that?
Yes, because that's what you said.
Yes, because thank you, Savannah. Yes, because that's what you said. Yes, because that's what you said. And then Q like probably another like 2 years of just so emotional, so emo. And then like, and this all connects back to like motion was this past week, and like I feel like I need to talk about that too. But the moral of the story is, don't say crap you don't mean. And that's for children, but that's also for adults. Like, stop telling people that you love them and you don't love them. Like,
yes, and
you're a liar.
Stop acting like girls are crazy when we come back and be like, well, you said this.
You said.
So don't act like don't gaslight me.
Don't gaslight me.
Crazy. You're the one that said it.
You said it. And now I'm nuts because I'm like holding you accountable to what you said. And like, not to make this about me, but like going even to like Carl Lentz and like his kids are like, you said that you were my family.
Yeah.
Like you said, and like family is unconditional. That's why if you work at a place where they say this is your work family, go the other direction. Run this way.
I don't want to be blood with any of you.
We are not family at work. We're a team. We're a team because teams are conditional. We're only on the team if you can make the cut. If you work hard enough, if we work together enough, if you're talented enough, like there are some qualifiers. There's love on a team, but it is very much conditional love to be on a team. Your work family is not your family. No. They're your teammates, and I think you should treat them as your teammates.
Always get I don't know if you feel this way, but when people say that to me too early, I kind of get an
sus.
Yeah, like I'm like, sus. I don't
know, just like in a world where like it's easy to just throw a bunch of stuff out there, guys, like don't be Swoosh, don't be him. And granted, he's an adult now, and I'm sure that he's wonderful and he's not like this, you know, today, but like at the time, don't be Swoosh and don't be careless with your words, okay? Because then you'll have me being like, okay, so what's up? Are we getting together? And he's like, I'm terrified. Like, what are you talking about? Which is the most embarrassing thing. It's like top 3 most embarrassing moments of my entire existence where like I legitimately could have just melted into the floor and You could have just left me there. That was probably one of the worst things that's happened to me.
We should do an embarrassing moments episode, because I have a handful in my back pocket that honestly you all would just cringe. Like, you would get halfway through the episode and you'd have to turn it off because you'd be cringing so hard for us.
And it's like there's embarrassing that's like, oh, ha, 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 funny. You know, it's the Becca Harold track cab. Like, that's like embarrassing, but it's funny.
Hilarious.
The story I just told, you guys feel bad for me.
That's
like, this is invoking, like, I'm sure, like, great amounts of sympathy. Of like, oh, that's so sad. She actually thought that he meant that? Like, so embarrassing, but like, in hindsight, obviously, wasn't the love of my life. I'm engaged to the love of my life.
Yeah.
I went from swoosh to 401 bay, so that just tells you right now the progression in adulthood.
He's like 6'10". He's handsome. He does financials.
We have just leveled up in every way imaginable.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's crazy.
The one last thing I wanted to talk about with the Lentz podcast too that I loved is the therapist episode. The first episode that they did with his therapist.
Can I set the stage for you on how I listen to this?
Yes.
I want to hear your thoughts, but I just want you to know the state I was in. I did what I've never done before, but I will be doing again. I took like a podcast nap, but it wasn't a nap.
Oh, so like lay down, close your eyes?
Laid down, closed my eyes, and just listened.
Wow.
So relaxing. Like, you should try it. Like,
and you didn't fall asleep?
I didn't fall asleep.
Okay.
Like, I knew that, like, my body I just wasn't ready to fall. I didn't really want to take a nap. I had dinner planned. I just really take a nap. But I'm like, my eyes were heavy and like they were too heavy to watch TV. And so I was like, I'm just going to close my eyes. I'm going to listen to this podcast because, like, guys, we do actually prepare for this podcast. And I knew I needed to listen to it before today. So I just turned it on and I just like laid it there with my eyes closed, and it was really great. So I would recommend that you guys do that. Okay. But I want to hear what you thought.
Yeah. I will say I'm like on the verge of falling asleep pretty much at all times. Like, I can, if there's one thing that I don't struggle with, it's falling asleep. I can fall asleep at the drop of a pen. That's like one of my greatest gifts in life, if I'm honest. But
that's how she knows God loves her.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have trouble. Like, let me tell you what I have is peace on my pillow, and I will fall asleep as soon as my head hits it.
Honestly, thank you, Lord.
Thank you, God. But I loved the therapist episode so much because I feel like I just learned a lot. Like, I learned a lot about the patterns of addiction. I feel like this is any of these clips that are going on social media. I don't even know if Instagram's going to let us talk about any of this without like banning our clip. But like the patterns of abuse and how like early childhood sexual abuse, like how, because I've heard people talk about that, right? About how like, oh, this person who had an affair or like was an abuser themselves, they were abused as a child. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess I get that, but I just didn't understand how that happens. And the therapist like really broke it down, and we'll link all these episodes for you guys to go back and listen to, because you will not be catching me explaining all of this. But I just thought that was really interesting and really insightful. But then I also really appreciated the part, and this was really just something that Carl said in passing, but it really stuck with me, about how the Christianese of it all, and almost like the toxic positivity that he was dealing with in his own personality, where like everything that he talked about in therapy, he would end with, but I know it's gonna be okay. But I know it's gonna be okay. But I know like God loves me. But I know like God's good. And we've talked about this on Call Me Thursday in recent episodes too. Just like being honest with yourself and being honest with God, and like you don't have to end cap every sentence with, but God, I know you're good. But like, but I know it's gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. And he was talking about a certain scenario where he was talking to, I guess, another pastor, and he said the statement like, as an addict, I know that I am blah blah blah. And he was like, whoa, let me stop you right there. You're not an addict. You're a child of God, and blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, intention, great, but he was like, okay, but listen, dude, like if I don't identify as the thing that I am, I will royally screw up again. Like, I've got to recognize this in myself and understand like the patterns that have accumulated in my life over the past like 4 decades. And like, you just got to accept that, and it's okay. And it's not saying that that's what my entire identity is wrapped up in, but like, we don't have to skirt past the fact that like, I am an addict. in this at this point in
Right.
my life, and like
Yeah.
that does not make me not a child of God, you know? So I really
100%.
appreciated that part, and had a conversation with some of our friends this past week, and we had them over for dinner about
Mhm.
how they've kind of dealt with that in their own life, with like frustrations with other people, where they're
Mhm.
like just trying to have a normal conversation, but everything is just end capped with some sort of like Christianese that they're like,
Yeah.
I was relating to you, and like I was really empathizing with you, and I felt like we're on the same ground with like things that we're both struggling with, and then you
Mhm.
just decided to say, to end cap it with something that was like basically invalidating everything that I was feeling.
Wow. Wow.
Which I was like, that just, I feel like I just learned so much about that in the past week, and listening to these
Mm.
episodes and having conversations with friends where I'm like, you don't have to end cap every traumatic thing that happens to you and every hard thing that you're going through with, but
Mhm.
I know God is good. It's okay. And I'm going to pray about it. And like, I love God, and I'm okay, you know?
Right.
Um, so
Wow, that I've never even the word you just used just now, like, it like, invalidating, like,
yeah.
we I think, like, as Christians, like, when we say that, like, "Da da 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 da," but I know that God is good, it's like, we almost use it as, like or at least me, like, use it as a like, I'm redirecting my soul, like, my soul's
Yeah.
going down this path of, like, she's sad, she's sad, she's sad, but I'm gonna, like, exit off this off-ramp and, like, "Hey, God is good, and life is good, and God's for me, not against me." Like, I think of it as, like, a redirection of my soul, but, like, that's so interesting to think that, like, there is a way to think of it as, like, okay, but, like, God being good, are you now, like, is it now everything I feel not valid or not real or not true because, like, God is good? And
Hmm.
can those 2 things, like yes, they can coexist and, like, God can be good, but, like, do we have to, I don't know, almost like tampen or, like or dampen down how I feel because God is good? And I don't know, I think it's helpful, and we probably do it like that pastor did when I know what you're talking about with, like, with Carl when he said that. The intention was great, and, like, the intention was
Yeah.
really, really good and helpful, but, like, having the perspective too of, like, don't like, I can see it makes sense to me how someone could see that as, like, potentially, like, invalidating, um, and even what he said about being an addict too, like, you can, like, know that you are free and free from sin, and you're free in Christ, and that you have been made clean, and, like and still have, like, boundaries, and still have,
Yeah.
like, parameters and things guardrails in place to help you be the best version of yourself. So it's
Yeah.
like, whether it's saying that you're an addict or whatever, but it's like, "Hey, I'm free, and I know that, like, you know, I don't none of these things own me anymore, but I'm also, like, not gonna go to a bar, and I'm also
Yeah.
not gonna stay out super late at night, and I'm
Hmm.
also not gonna look at certain things." And it's not to say that, like, I'm any less free or I'm any less a child of God, it's just to say that, like, I have guardrails on my life to
Right.
help me be the best version of myself that God's called me to be.
Hmm.
Um, so I do, like, I see the heart behind it and the spirit behind it for sure, and I think it's, like, an interesting take, but I just think it's just like, "Hey, no, I'm just trying to be wise and have, like, guardrails and boundaries," you know?
Yeah, and I think it's situational, and it depends on the person, and it depends on like what it is that you're going through. Because I also see so much value in what you're saying, and I know that that's like how you process too, and how I think in a lot of situations is a healthy way to process, where it's like you pour out the things that you're dealing with, and you
Mhm,
like honestly let God know how you're feeling, but then like the right and proper path a lot of times is to like redirect all of that emotion into
mhm,
worship, into saying like, but God, like I know that you're good, and like reassuring your soul of the thing. Like that's
mhm,
scriptural 100%.
mhm,
But I know, and maybe this is part of all of this is like so much of it is still a mystery to me, if I'm honest, because I don't
yeah,
even know what's right or what's like the quote unquote correct way to pray through like things that you're feeling. All I
mhm,
know is that in the past month or two, since I started talking about this whole concept of like being more honest with your emotions in your relationships with God, whoever, that
mhm,
in the times when I have genuinely just been like, this sucks. Like,
mhm,
I hate this. And I like, this is not what I signed up for. I'm frustrated with this. And I'm just going to leave that there for you. and let you know that like I'm bringing it to you because I know that that's what I'm supposed to do and that's what my heart wants to do, but like that's it.
That's all I
And
got.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
leave that here.
Mhm.
And on the contrary to just trying to like not let myself feel the weight of the stuff that I hate and am struggling with.
Mhm.
And I don't know, heck, maybe that's the answer is like you've got to let yourself fully feel it before you start to like redirect. Because if you just
Yeah.
are constantly
I would
trying to
agree with that.
redirect,
I would agree with
then
that.
you're never actually processing your emotions, you're never processing your
Yeah.
traumas, you're never processing like just hard things that you're going through. So maybe that's the answer. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
and I think that, like, there are psalms that's like, "Everything's horrible, everything's horrible, everything's horrible, everything's horrible, but God, you're good." And, like,
mhm,
I'm encouraged that there are more than one of those. You know, I think that,
totally.
like, sometimes I feel like I have to get it out, exclamation like, so let's say it's Monday. Monday, I share all the things that I'm struggling with, but God, you're good. But then Tuesday, I'm upset again. And it's like, "Oh, well, did I not get it all out on Monday?
Yeah.
Or did something else happen?" This feels like the same thing I talked about yesterday. And, like, I think just, like, end capping every day with, like, a, "Hey, but, like, I know, like, my eye I'm picking my eyes up, you know, I'm picking my
Yeah.
eyes up. This is what it looks like right here, but I'm picking my eyes up." And, like, being okay with, like, a lot of this stuff is, like, it is day by day, hour by hour, like, repetitive, and I think that that's so difficult for my personality because I just when I put something to bed, I want it to be done. Like,
Same. Yeah.
I want it to be done, and to think that, like, okay, Monday, I'm praying about this thing, and then Tuesday, I'm praying about this thing, and it might be a thing, like, if I never ended each day on the up note of praise, then it's like, "Okay, when am I gonna get to the praise? Because this thing's not
Mhm.
over yet."
There's always gonna be
There's
something.
always a thing.
Yeah.
So now it's been a
Yeah.
week, and now it's been 2 weeks, and now it's been 3 weeks, and I'm waiting for all the bad to come out of my system before I exclamation point with the good. But if I'm waiting for all the bad and all the crap to come out of my system, I might never get to the exclamation point.
Yeah.
I might never get there. Like, if I'm just waiting for the gunk to be over with. And so it's like, okay, if I know that about myself, and if I know that there are issues that are gonna be recurring issues, oh, I may as well just end every day on a praise, and every hour on a praise, and every 30 minutes on praise. Because, like, at the end of the day, when am I gonna pray? If I wait till it's all good, if I wait
Yeah.
till it's over, I might not get there for 6 months. You know,
Yeah.
God might not hear a good word out of my mouth for 6 months. Um, but I think that even when we're having conversations with people, which is like what you're talking about with your friends, like, you know, I think that that's just like an area of, like, tact or strategy of, like, hey, you're vibing with someone, you guys are talking about, like, body image issues, okay, because that's been on my bingo card. Like, you know, hey, me and this other girl, we're struggling with what's going on in our bodies. And but I'm not like, yeah, but like that's good. You know, I'm like, you know, and all of I'm probably saying something like all these things are 100% real. Like, these are 1,000% like real and fair and legitimate things. But I'm grateful that, like, this is not the end of the conversation. Like,
Mhm.
I'm personally great. Like, how I deal is I know that this isn't the end of the conversation. I know I'm fearfully, wonderfully made, and I know I'm, you know, charm is deceitful and beauty is fleeting, and all these things. But, like, almost like a not like a dismissive, yeah, but God's good, but like a,
Mhm.
yeah, this sucks, and like just like how I deal is this is how I deal. You know,
Yeah.
and I think that that's like so much of our heart on this podcast too, like our intention is not to like come on and be like, ah, God is good. But it's like the way Sav and I talk about this stuff, it's like it comes out of our mouth like breathing comes out of our mouth. Like, it's
Mhm.
not always my intention to like throw in like a this is how I pray, or this is, you know, reading the Bible, or this is the sermon I listen. Like, it's not that's not like I'm not trying. It's just
Mhm.
is like it's so in us, it's like breathing, and I think that when it's in you kinda like it's breathing, then I think it comes across my hope is, like, a little bit more tactfully and, like, a little bit more gracefully than, like, "Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, like, I'm sorry, I know you're bankrupt and your family or somebody has cancer and your kid's sick and you're, ah, but God's good," you know, because that's just weird
Yeah.
and off-putting and awkward, and, like, I think that there's a way to do it tactfully, but, like, the way you do it tactfully, I think, is, like, if it's just, like, the exchange of air, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, and I think it I don't know, maybe it doesn't always come back to this, but in my head, for a lot of people that I know, it comes back to like, and when I say a lot of people that I know, it's like I know people in my life that I can think of that will tack that on to the end of the conversation. I'm like, but like I'm not super certain that you like know that and that
Right.
you like actually believe that. So I think a lot of times it does come back to like, don't say things you don't mean. And Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot. Nobody come at me for bringing up Jordan Peterson because I listen to him a lot. I think he's really interesting, but I know he's a really controversial character. But that's one of the things he said in the past that really resonated with me is that like, when you become self-aware, at least to a certain extent, what it feels like when you're saying things that you don't mean. Like you feel disintegrated and like you feel integrated in your own soul and body when you're saying things that you know that you mean. And that's hard for humans. It's hard for me a lot of times because it means I have to take time, and like for me, I process by writing. And so I have to write out how I feel, and I have to write, like take time and like by hand put on paper these things. And sometimes I'm like writing something, I scratch it out because I'm like, that's not what I meant to say. Like I'm just trying to put words to what I'm feeling. But like when you have that moment when you're like, that's it, like it's okay to wait until you have the thing that you're like, that's actually what I mean to say, So I don't know, that's like a random tangent, but I think it just goes back to like, don't say stuff that you don't mean. And so it's like, if somebody's having a really hard time with something, it's okay for them to not feel like God is good in the moment, and you don't have to tack that on at the end of the conversation in a way that is going to feel invalidating, even though it's true.
and like I think just it comes back to too, like just being genuine and being like, okay, because especially if you're having this dialogue with this individual, like, and even if you want there to be some sort of like hope injection, like it's I think just kind of asking permission is helpful too. Like, okay, do you want me to respond? You want me to listen?
Yeah, like how do you want me to respond right
how
now?
do you want me to respond? Yeah. And if it's just want me to listen, like, thank you for sharing that with me. Now I know how to pray for you.
Yeah.
And like, boom, done.
I ask Christian that Christian asks me that all the time. Like, what do you need right now? You need me to like give you some guidance? I'm like, usually no.
Usually no, back up.
But like that's
we talk about that in premarital too. Like, can we categorize I want to talk about this, and the category is problem solving. The category is venting. The category is like give this is the subject and this is the category. Like and and it can be the same subject, but it could be work, category problem solving, and then the next day it could be work, category venting.
Yeah.
And then or it could be work, category what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Like
help me.
Help. So I think that's a fair thing in communication. Yes, and I think that's what I'm noticing too in premarital, that a lot of the stuff we reserve for, and this is why I love that I feel like I've seen more churches start to do relationship series, not just around romantic relationships, because all this communication stuff that we're talking about, I'm like, y'all need to talk to everybody this way. Like, y'all need to be doing this with everybody, including your friend who you're not sure if they're on a spot to hear all of, you quote scripture about their hard situation. Hey, what do you need from me? And if it's listening, I think there's a way to listen and just be like, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Now I know how to pray for you. Let me know if you want to talk about this again. And just be done. Moonwalk, done. It's a wrap. It's finished. Like, be done with it, Exactly. Moonwalk away. No, nothing to see here. But so honestly, shout out to premarital, giving us the tools.
Shout out to premarital, honestly teaching us everything we need to know.
Honestly, at least helping us start to talk about it.
Yeah.
At least that.
It's true. Well, I feel like we could go on and on about. I at least go on and on about this podcast series.
It's really good. We'll link a handful of episodes for you guys. Because it was really great. Also, I do feel like I do want to talk about this. You guys should buckle up. This is a long one. Enjoy.
I know.
Motion conference. We talked about that a ton at the end of last week's episode. If you guys didn't, if you listened to the end, you heard us talk about Sav and I and our friend Grace G, we all went to this like student conference at the church that all three of us were at the time. G's still there. That's very much like her family, her home church. we all went there 9 years ago and got saved, like, for real. I think we all knew who God was in a general
Mhm.
sense, but, and all had varying degrees of, like, exposure to church and exposure to God and exposure to God's word and things like that, but, all just started walking with Jesus for real, 9 years ago last week, which is nuts, and we went so G and I were back in the building this past week, which and G and I have already talked, like, you guys, you and Christian, you have to be here next year. Like, it's
Yeah.
just it has to be a whole thing. Like, we just have to make it a whole thing next year because
Yeah.
10 years is a big deal. Um, but so good. And I said I would, like, circle back to this with the, talking about Swoosh because the memories kinda came back to me. Like, so it was so I was texting Sav, like, the first day because I was like, I feel so emo in so many different ways. Like, I feel emo, like, gratitude, but I also feel emo, like, that. Like, this is just all kind of, like, a lot. Like,
Yeah.
I
Like
felt a lot of
bringing me
emotions.
back to those days that held
Yes.
good and bad and ugly, and yeah.
100 lots of change for us.
Yeah.
And I think I should say too, like, first disclaimer, like we say, like, yeah, we started walking with Jesus 9 years ago. I also reflected a lot on I've done a lot of dumb stuff between that 9 years ago and today. So it was not let's not get it twisted. We didn't get saved and then all of a sudden I had, perfect behavior.
No.
And, like,
Same.
we still we were knuckleheads for still a large chunk of that 9
Yeah.
years.
Still
But
am at times.
still
So,
am. But, like, we were on our way. Like, we were on the path. We were
yeah.
on the road. We weren't there, nor have we've made it a little bit further down the road today. But
Yeah.
we're still nowhere near close to the end of the road. But I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, this is such a moment, but also, like, humble thyself because after that moment, you still we're not doing what you're doing today. But it was after that conference that was the first. So you're saved, boom, you're in. I'm back at college. Um, Holy Spirit tells me to break up with Swoosh. And that was the first time in my life that, like, now I know what it feels like. I feel like when I really hear from God, I felt like the only way I know how to describe it is how I described it when it was happening, was I felt like there was a boulder on my chest, and that if
Mhm.
I did not break up with this person, that the weight of the boulder was going to crush me, like, where I sat. Like, I just was so sure that that was what I was supposed to do, and that was the first time that I was like, "Okay, nobody told me this part. Nobody told me that, like, to follow God, you'd have to let go of some things and leave some things and give up some things." And maybe somebody tried to tell me, but I wasn't really listening, and now I'm having to do it for real, like,
Yeah.
5 minutes after, I just decided I was gonna be all in on this thing, and so me and this individual, we break up, and then this whole story ensues after. But it was cool because I was like, 9 years ago, we were here and, like, God, like, it was as a result of this conference, I felt like God prompted me to, like, leave something so I could walk into something else.
Mhm.
Um, and then this year, Charlotte Campbell, she preached a message called, like, Leading Your Leaving, and it was all about, like, you've gotta kinda, like, take the initiative and lead the way and, like, the things that you're gonna have to leave and put down as you've cried, you've done the boohoo, you've done the whatever, like, it's not emotion, it's motion, like, but if you just do the boohoo and you don't leave some things behind, then you're gonna come back to this conference the exact same way you left, like, and nothing's
Yeah.
going to have changed, you gotta let go of some things. Which I love. I love picking up good things, but I also am a big, "Hey, listen, you gotta leave some stuff behind."
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like that the thing that the Holy Spirit really spoke to me this week, which I'm so excited about, is like, I gotta leave some things again. I gotta leave
Mhm.
some things again because now before it was 9 years ago and God said, like, hey, you can't be in this relationship and then go forward and all the things I have for you. But this time, 9 years later, like, I'm getting married, you know?
Mhm.
Like, I'm getting married now, and, like, I still, like, to this day, as, on July 28th, as we're sitting here recording this, I still cannot even tell you that I scratched the surface on how big a deal marriage is. Like, I
Yeah.
know it's a big deal conceptually, and I know that it's God's idea, and I know that God thinks it's a really big deal. Um, but, like, I feel like maturity-wise, I feel like I kinda gotta I gotta grow up a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, I think that I have been very content, and this is how I know that, like, this is not shame or condemnation, like, it's conviction, but it's in a way that I'm smiling because it feels, like, hopeful and exciting, but, like,
Mhm.
I think that I have allowed, and I think that there's a corner of it where it's funny, but then there's a corner of it where I've taken it a little bit too far, that it's just been like, "Well, I'm just a girl," and, like, I've kind of
Mm.
allowed it to let me, like, shirk off some level of responsibility for what I'm listening to or what I'm consuming or how my attitude or how I'm responding to things. 'Cause it's like, "Well, hey, I'm just a girl." And so I'm gonna, be moody, or I'm gonna have an attitude, or
Mm.
I'm going to, listen to content where other girls are affirming me that it's okay to have a bad attitude. And they're affirming me that it's
Yeah.
okay to talk bad about people or to talk bad about myself. I'm struggling with these body image issues, and then I'm listening to this podcast where these girls are talking about how they don't like the way that they look. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering why I feel the way I feel. But it's just all been in the name of, like, I'm just a girl. And so then there's just this vast majority, I shouldn't say vast majority, but then there's this whole swath of 20 and 30 somethings who, like, we've all in our head, we're grown-ups because we're paying bills and we're going to our jobs, and, like, so we are mature, we're grown. But, like, I think in a sneaky way I've allowed it to, like, I feel immature, and I think that,
Mm.
like, as I think this the thought is, like, hey, like, you have to grow up, and it's like that verse out of First Corinthians where it's like, hey, when I was a child, I talked like a child and I acted like a child. Like,
Mhm.
when I was a single girly, I talked like a single girly, I acted like a single girly, but, like, I'm about to be, in a covenant and somebody's wife, and,
Yeah.
bringing him good, not harm all the days of his life. I'm gonna bear kids and I'm gonna raise kids, and it's not to say, listen, I'm still silly, right? I'm still myself, and it's not to say that you can't be silly, but I felt the same message I think that God had for a bunch of 12-year-olds about, "Hey, you need to grow up." I think it was true for, like, a 28-year-old that, like,
Yeah.
"Hey, you gotta grow up a little bit." And I think that for us, or, like, our age group, I'm in my 20s, but it's like, we're young, but we're not that young.
We're, like, barely
We're barely in
we're
our
between 28 and
20s,
29, so
Like,
barely in our 20s.
we're barely in our 20s, like, but I'm just like, "I'm just a girl, I'm in my 20s." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, it's not, dude, we're old, like, we're getting up there, and it's like, "Hey, I'm still gonna be silly when I'm 70, right?" So it doesn't have anything to do with not
Yeah.
having fun or whatever, but, like, yeah, I just feel, um I feel like that God's calling me to grow up a little bit, and so I didn't know it at the time, but I feel like this content cleanse might be a little permanent. Because I did, like, I went through and I unfollowed a bunch of accounts and unfollowed a handful of podcasts that I listen to weekly or daily, and um, just because I think that, like, I don't think that, like, the woman that I want to be when I'm 50, I don't think that when do I decide that I want to start acting like her?
Yeah.
At 45, I'm like, okay, yeah, at 45, I'm going to start acting like who I want to be at 50. Like,
Yeah.
at what point do we put down the childish things that maybe don't feel like childish things because we're doing them with, like, a martini emoji? So it feels like we're grown, but, like, actually, no, we're just a bunch of kids ordering Diet Cokes and French fries. Like,
We can't be just putting emojis by things and acting like it's fine, guys.
that's what we're
We
doing.
gotta grow up.
We have to grow up a little bit. And
Yeah.
so that's, like, the least sexy and fun thing ever, I know, but, like, I'm actually so excited because I feel like you just don't wake up, but that's what we talk about, like, you don't just wake up where you wanna be, like,
Right.
because if that was the case, like, we would have never started the podcast. We would have never started this podcast if we just woke up where we wanted to be in life, but, like, we wanted to do something that's, like, we felt like it was meaningful and it mattered,
Yeah.
and, like,
And it shows the
podcast about building a
process.
meaningful
Yeah.
life, and yeah, and so, yeah. Anyway, so I just feel like before 9 years ago, God asked me to leave a relationship that I was in, and now, like, God's asking me to I'm leaving my home. I'm leaving the state that I've always lived in. I'm leaving my last name. I'm leaving
Mhm.
being a single girly. And I'm walking into a new place and a new church and a new last name. And I'm still myself and I'm still silly and I'm still fun, but, like, also, like, grow up. Like,
Yeah.
like, but even things like grow up, yes, in the area of like content consumption, sure, but also grow up and like, all of these, like literally what I wrote down today, I'm like the fear of being fat. Like, grow up. Like, what old are you? 12? Like, stop. Like, stop. You're
How old
seriously
are you, 12?
like the worst thing that could happen to you would be if you gain 10 pounds. Like, grow up. Like,
Yeah.
because like you're furiously going to the gym first thing in the morning because you're running from this fear of being fat. But like, when's the last time you actually like you picked up your Bible and like fed yourself? But like you're afraid of being fat, and so you're running from being fat. But what are you doing to like feed yourself to become like the person that you want to be? Like, grow up.
So
Like, you're so concerned with having abs that you can't think about anything else. Like, grow up. Like, don't be 12. Like, you're an adult. You're not going to look 16 for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean you're not healthy. It doesn't mean you're not taking care of yourself. But like, grow up. Like, seriously, you're scared of being fat. Like, relax. Like,
yeah.
you take care of yourself. You eat well. Like, this is dumb. Like, grow up.
Yeah.
And so, in the nicest way, it's giving grow up over here.
Giving grow up.
Sorry, guys. That's a bummer.
No, I love all this, and I of course, I feel like I'm kind of starting to process through similar things too, but I'm not ready to talk about it on the podcast yet. I want to talk about it with you on the phone outside of the recording. So we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I've been processing this for like 3 days, so
Like, I'm gonna put this on the podcast eventually. Probably, I feel like it's a lot of things that I'm kind of starting to think about since my birthday is coming up, and just doing like the birthday reflection time, and I'm like a little over 4 weeks from my 28th birthday. So it's just like it's getting in reflection mode and starting to think about like the things I've been dealing with this past year and what I want year 28 going into 29 to be. And of course, like it always is, we're like on the same vein, just in different ways.
Just in different ways. You just gotta freaking grow up. Just don't be such a baby. Just grow up. I know. And that's like, I don't know. But to me, like, that's like love. Like, if I were to tell, like, the way I tell you guys, I'm like, quit being ungrateful and go vote. Like, I will say that to you and talk to you like that because that's how I talk to you if I love you. And like, telling myself to grow up, like, that's not me being like mean to myself. That's like, that's actually what is it, the phrase like self-love is sometimes like self-discipline or something like that.
Something like that.
Sometimes
No, as you were saying all of that though, I was like, this definitely tracks with like the ways that I've heard you talk about how God talks to you in the past.
100%.
And he's like, Sarah,
grow up. Okay.
Grow up, sis.
Like, some people say, like, God, like, he's a shepherd and he pulls me back with the staff. I'm like, he picks up my ponytail like this. He goes around, he gets a grip full of my ponytail and he pulls me back the other direction. Like, but it is an act of love. It is an act of love to get your ponytail pulled.
It is.
That's how I receive feedback. 100%.
It's a tough love.
I need my ponytail pulled. And that's why, like, I love friends who will pull my ponytail. Like, it's essential. You got to have it.
Are you going to tell the swoosh story about the time I pulled your ponytail on my way to class that time?
Stop. No, I need you to tell it because I'm triggered. Please stop. I'm literally adjusting myself. Anyway, go ahead.
I love that you brought up swoosh in this episode because this is definitely applicable, because there was a time when I think we were just like in that time frame where you guys had broken up, but you were still like having a hard time with the breakup, and like you guys were still kind of talking about like maybe you'll get back together, but like he was just doing whatever swoosh does.
Non-committal.
But I remember like you guys were in this cycle of like doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I was like, Sarah, this is the definition of insanity. You're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And you were like, you did not just quote the definition of insanity to me. It's like, yes, I
remember
did.
this. I remember,
and I did.
And I think that I don't know if we were on the phone, because that definitely happened. Or if it was me, you, and Grace. Because there was another time, I think that might have been just me and you, because there's another day I was on the phone with Grace, and I feel like you were on the line too. And I was getting ready for class, and I was sobbing. And I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, because we had all the same classes, and I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And Grace was like, okay, well, you are. So, like, what are you going to do?
Well, you are.
She said, okay, well, you are.
Go.
So, like, we have to graduate. So, like, let's go.
We are not changing schools, sister.
Like, so what are you going to do? Like, you got to go.
Oh my God.
But that is, for me, like, that's what I love that about my friends. Like, people who will just tell me if I'm being nuts. And like the amount of times I send the text, like, am I nuts? Like that, like 3 letter, like 3 word text. Like it's probably like tell me like your most sent like 3 word text. Am I nuts? Question mark. Like, or is that weird? Question mark.
Yeah.
Um. Oh my gosh! Well, we just got so excited. We were just looking at each other and we just chit chatted right on through.
We
didn't
just chit chatted our way to an hour and a half episode, sister. We sure did.
Chatty girls.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's wrap up before we don't have anything else to talk about next week. Even though we know
Literally,
that that's not
okay.
possible. But well, I have something that I'm very excited about, but I'm gonna let you share first. What are you excited about?
I am excited that what's today? Thursday. Oh well, Al's gonna be coming into town, and wedding invitations are going out this week, which is so exciting. And my bridal shower is this weekend, which I'm so excited about. So
I'm
those
so
are
sad
2
I'm not gonna
things.
be there,
I
but
know,
it's
I
gonna be
know.
amazing.
It'll be great. We'll have lots of pics, and we'll have the bachelorette trip together. So much good content's gonna come out of the bachelorette trip.
So okay, well, that is my excited for. I am so freaking excited for your bachelorette trip.
Really?
And yes, because me and Grace and your sisters and really the whole bridal party, we've all just been like texting constantly
Oh
the
my
past couple
gosh.
of weeks, like planning. And shout out to Grace because homegirl is born to plan a bachelorette trip, let me
Dude,
tell you.
she
And
really
she
needs to
has
like
so many
charge
fun
people to
ideas.
plan their bachelorette trips. I feel like
No,
she could have a
seriously.
whole business doing this. Like
She really, really could. And she just has so many fun ideas. It's gonna be so funny, it's gonna be so girly, I am also just like I'm so excited to go and celebrate you, but also I'm so excited to have a beach trip without my child and to fly alone. I
without your
cannot wait.
kids.
I truly
Oh my
cannot
gosh.
wait
Yeah,
for
I
that.
literally haven't done that in a year. Like literally.
Yeah.
Haven't done it in a year. That's
Yeah.
gonna be so fun. I love that
is.
like all the people are just gonna be there. And I told Grace when we were because I know nothing about like I know in general I think we're going to the beach, but other than that I
Mhm.
really don't know anything. And Grace texted me a couple weeks ago asking me like, okay, what are the vibes in your head? And I was like, honestly, this is just like the only reason I'm having a bachelorette trip is because I want an excuse to like go on vacation with all my friends and you all have to come. Like
Yeah.
there's like any other time that you're planning just a girls trip, like people can give the excuse of I have to work or my kid or whatever. This is like the one time no one can give an excuse and everyone has to come.
So
So
true.
everyone has to come. I'm holding you guys all captive and I'm getting to go on vacation with all my best friends.
Oh my
So
gosh. I'm so excited too. I think I've said this multiple times, but this is my first bachelorette trip that I've been on that I feel like I'm friends with everyone that's going. So it's going to be so fun.
so excited. It's so fun. And you guys have heard me talk about obviously Sav. You've heard me talk about G. You've heard me talk about Meredith. You've heard me talk about Katie. And obviously my 2 sisters. And everyone's gonna be there. The only person I'm so sad is not gonna come.
I
He really
know.
does have other
I'm
stuff
bummed
going on.
about that.
But it's literally like all people that you guys know I'm actually close with because I talk about them on here all the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm so excited and that they just all know each other and love each other and like love.
All the kisses.
So
It's going to
good.
be so much fun. So much fun. Well, guys, as we wrap up, thank you for listening to another episode of the Call Me Thursday podcast. Thank you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube,
Hey,
we love you. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Call Me Thursday podcast, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Call Me Thursday podcast. I think is what we put it as. And be sure to follow us on whatever app you listen to podcasts on. Hit the follow button so you never miss an episode. And as always, if you will leave a comment on YouTube or leave a 5-star review on your podcast app to let us know why you're loving the pod, we would deeply appreciate it. So, Sarah, I will call you Thursday.
Sounds like a plan, sister. I'll call you Thursday. Bye.
Bye.